RPG games on this list will absolutely destroy your weekend if you're not careful. Titles like The Witcher or Crimson Desert show just how easy it is to get addicted to massive boss fights, huge fantasy world, and stories that only get better the longer you play. Let's get into it.
Very impressive.
Crimson Desert looks like somebody at Pearl Abyss saw The Witcher 3, Dragon's Dogma, and then decided to throw all of that into one giant fantasy RPG blender. And somehow, it actually looks like it works. You play as Cliff, a mercenary captain traveling through this massive, war-torn continent called Pywell. And the game seems way more focused on dynamic gameplay systems than just being another generic open-world RPG. One minute you're in grounded sword fights, then suddenly you're wrestling giant bosses, riding dragons, or getting into full-scale battlefield chaos. The combat especially looks kind of insane. It has that heavy action RPG feel where every hit looks brutal, but it's also weirdly flashy at the same time. There are grabs, aerial attacks, environmental interactions, and physics stuff happening everywhere.
Parasites are merely a symptom of a greater sickness in Faerun. The infected hear the voice of the Absolute and believe it to be a god.
The Absolute is more dangerous than you can possibly conceive.
Baldur's Gate 3 is one of those RPGs that almost feels dangerous because once it clicks with you, your free time basically disappears for the next several months. The whole thing is built around player freedom. And I don't mean fake RPG freedom, where the game gives you two dialogue options that both lead to the same result anyway. I mean the kind where entire quest lines, companions, and story outcomes can completely change depending on what dumb decision you made 20 hours earlier. Combat is turn-based, but it's the kind of turn-based combat where people start throwing shoes at enemies, stacking explosive barrels across entire rooms, or accidentally causing city-wide disasters because they cast the wrong spell at the wrong time. Baldur's Gate 3 is one of those RPGs where the characters and player choices become just as important as the main story itself, and it all comes together to create one of the best RPG experiences in years.
When the night has come.
Final Fantasy XV still feels like one of the most unique RPGs Square Enix has ever made, because underneath all the giant monsters and fantasy politics, it's basically a road trip game. A very anime road trip game, but still a road trip game. You play as Noctis traveling across the world of Eos with his friends, while his kingdom slowly falls apart in the background. And honestly, some of the game's best moments aren't even the big story scenes. It's the smaller moments like driving at night, stopping for food, camping, or listening to the group talk. That's the stuff that really makes the party feel believable. The combat also fully shifted into real-time action, which was a huge change for the series. You're warping around enemies with giant weapons, summoning massive creatures, and flying across the battlefield like some teleporting anime hero. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is one of the coolest looking RPGs right now, just based on presentation alone. The art style, character designs, animations, everything has this really stylish mix of dark fantasy and Belle Epoque aesthetics that instantly makes it stand out from other turn-based RPGs. Combat is probably the biggest hook though. It's fully turn-based, but there are real-time mechanics mixed in like dodging, parrying, counters, and timed attacks. So fights look way more active than traditional JRPG combat. Some of it almost reminds me of Persona mixed with Sekiro timing systems, which is a weird combination, but it actually works surprisingly well from what they've shown. The visual effects during combat also look ridiculous in the best way. Every attack has so much impact and style behind it that even normal encounters look important.
Their dreams, their love for each other. We exist for as long as she wants. You won't yet understand. But this is a kindness, not a cruelty.
The people hope in these benighted times. Yet that light too shall soon succumb to evil's ceaseless claim. Only you can take that spark and kindle it to flame.
Dragon Quest XI is basically classic JRPG design done really, really well. It's one of those games that sticks to classic JRPG design and somehow makes it feel timeless instead of outdated. You've got turn-based combat, huge towns to explore, party members with tons of personality, giant monsters, crafting, side activities, and a world that just feels fun to spend time in. And even though the structure is very traditional, the pacing is so good that the game stays surprisingly addictive for a massive RPG. You start off as the Luminary, a hero connected to an ancient prophecy, and from there, the game slowly opens up into this huge fantasy adventure with giant cities, weird monsters, party drama, and way more emotional moments than people probably expect going in. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 goes in a completely different direction from most RPGs because it focuses heavily on realism and historical immersion instead of fantasy powers and giant monsters. You're back playing as Henry in medieval Bohemia, dealing with wars, politics, and a world where even regular bandits can be dangerous early on. The combat still uses that directional sword fighting system from the first game, so fights are slower and more methodical than most action RPGs. You actually have to think about stamina, positioning, armor, and timing instead of just button mashing through enemies. A lot of the RPG systems are built around immersion too. Eating, sleeping, maintaining gear, learning skills, talking your way through situations, all of that plays a pretty big role in how you progress through the game. And once everything starts clicking together, it becomes one of those RPGs that's really easy to lose hours in without noticing. Elden Ring is basically what happens when From Software takes the Souls formula and drops it into a massive open world without losing what made those games good in the first place. The world is huge, but more importantly, it actually makes exploration rewarding. Half the time you'll wander into some random cave or ruin and suddenly find an entire hidden boss fight or underground area that feels bigger than dungeons from other RPGs. The combat still has that classic Souls DNA with stamina management, difficult enemies, and builds built around different weapons, summons, and playstyles. But Elden Ring gives players way more freedom than older From Software games. If a boss is destroying you for 3 straight hours, you can just leave, explore somewhere else, accidentally find a legendary weapon, and come back much stronger later.
Be it a god. But should ye fail to become aught at all, ye will be forsaken, amounting only to sacrifices.
They're always suffering, and why do the bad folks always win?
Because goodness without teeth punishes not. It only foments evil. Cleanse the world with blood and grow lotuses in it. That is your destiny.
Black Myth Wukong ended up being way more than just a visually impressive action RPG. The game takes a lot of inspiration from Journey to the West, with you playing as the Destined One, while fighting all kinds of mythological creatures across massive fantasy environments. Combat is probably the biggest reason people got hooked so fast. The staff fighting feels quick and fluid, but there's still enough weight behind attacks to make every fight satisfying. You're constantly mixing transformations, spells, and special abilities while fighting bosses that are sometimes just absurdly huge. And there are a lot of bosses. Like, a lot. Some are straightforward duels, while others feel more like giant cinematic encounters pulled straight out of mythology. The game also does a really good job with environment variety. Forests, temples, snowy mountains, almost every chapter feels visually different from the last one. And some of the creature designs are genuinely insane, in a good way.
Geralt, this is my story. Let me finish telling it.
The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is still one of the easiest RPGs to lose hundreds of hours in because the world feels so alive compared to a lot of open-world games. Even small side quests somehow turn into full storylines with choices, consequences, and characters you actually remember later. You play as Geralt, searching for Ciri while dealing with wars, monsters, politics, and basically non-stop bad situations across the Northern Kingdoms. The main story is great, but honestly, a lot of people probably remember the side content just as much. Combat mixes swords, magic signs, potions, and monster preparation. So there's more strategy to it than just hacking enemies apart non-stop. The two expansions also deserve a mention, because Blood and Wine especially feels bigger and better than some full RPGs by itself. Not many games manage to stay relevant this long, but Witcher 3 is definitely one of them. Divinity Original Sin 2 is the kind of RPG where the game gives you a problem and then just lets you figure things out however you want. And somehow, even the most ridiculous plans can actually end up working. The amount of freedom in this game is honestly ridiculous. You can talk your way through situations, steal from people, accidentally kill important characters, or completely break quests in ways that somehow still feel intentional. Combat is turn-based, but it's heavily built around environmental interactions. Oil, poison, water, fire, electricity, everything can combine into complete chaos during fights. One battle can start normally, and then suddenly the entire room is on fire while somebody summons a giant creature in the middle of it.
But not yet. First, we must fight. Together and alone, we must fight for the future of our world.
There's a big mountain to climb. We can do it together. But when we reach that summit, only one of us can be divine.
I hope you're looking forward to checking out the rest of the den in person.
That was absolutely incredible. I have to say, the Phantom Thieves have a lot of guts to do all that. Yourself included, Morgana.
Well, what can I say? Changing the world takes heart.
Persona 5 Royal somehow makes everyday high school life feel just as important as fighting supernatural monsters. And weirdly enough, that combination works incredibly well. You play as Joker, a student living a double life as part of the Phantom Thieves, a group entering distorted mental worlds called palaces to change corrupt people from the inside out. The turn-based combat is extremely stylish, but also surprisingly fast once you understand how the weakness and baton pass systems work. Battles flow really smoothly, especially later in the game when your team starts chaining attacks together non-stop. The addiction comes from the life sim side. Going to school, hanging out with friends, working jobs, the game somehow makes ordinary daily activities weirdly satisfying.
It was Sephiroth.
It can't be.
He wants to finish what he started and rule over the planet.
You coming?
Way ahead of ya!
We have to help them.
Let's get to work.
You are truly a model soldier.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth takes the remake formula from the first game and expands it into something much bigger. This time, the world opens up far beyond Midgar, letting you travel across huge regions filled with side quests, mini-games, exploration, and way too many distractions along the way. The combat system is still one of the best parts. It mixes real-time action with command-based abilities, magic, and party switching. So fights constantly feel active without losing the strategy side of classic Final Fantasy combat. The character interactions are also really strong here. A huge part of why Rebirth works is just spending more time with Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, Barrett, and the rest of the group while the story slowly gets more chaotic the further they travel. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is basically the point where Assassin's Creed fully embraced being an RPG. The game goes all in on dialogue choices, gear builds, side quests, all of it. And ancient Greece itself is absolutely huge. There's always something pulling your attention away from whatever you were originally trying to do. You play as Cassandra or Alexios, a mercenary trying to survive during the Peloponnesian War while dealing with cults, bounty hunters, political conflicts, and eventually even mythological threats. Combat is also much more ability-focused compared to the older Assassin's Creed games. You've got Sparta kicks, poison builds, stealth setup. There's a lot of freedom in how you approach fights. And Cassandra especially ended up becoming one of the better protagonists in the series. She just fits the tone and personality of the game really well.
Greece is lost. So are you ready now? The days of heroes are over.
Path ahead of me. Itchy. Would you be willing to get arrested for the family? Reputation is everything. If a Yakuza shows weakness, he's done.
I've been waiting to open this door for 18 years. A dream is what keeps you going. So I say you do it, just like you wanted. Become a hero.
Like a dragon switching from beat-em-up combat to turn-based RPG combat sounded like a terrible idea on paper. Then the game came out and somehow made it work perfectly. A huge reason for that is Ichiban Kasuga. He's such a genuinely likable idiot in the best way possible. Since he's obsessed with Dragon Quest, he basically sees normal street fights as over-the-top RPG battles, which gives the combat system an excuse to become completely ridiculous. So you end up summoning pigeons, beating people with bicycles, calling in absurd assist attacks, and fighting grown men dressed like JRPG enemies. It's completely ridiculous, but in the best way. At the same time, the game still delivers a surprisingly serious crime story underneath all the chaos. And that balance between drama and stupidity is something the series does really well.
The Dragon Priest. He ruled here in their name, ruled over Solstheim. But he did not serve the dragons. He devoured them. And like them...
The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim is still one of the top-tier RPGs when it comes to pure freedom and exploration. It's also one of the easiest games to get completely distracted in. You start heading toward one quest marker, and somehow a few hours later you're clearing caves, stealing random items, fighting dragons, and completely ignoring the main story. That freedom is a huge reason the game stayed popular for so long. Skyrim really lets people play however they want. Mage, warrior, or the stealth archer build that somehow almost everybody ends up using eventually. There's always another path to explore. And then there's the modding community, which has basically turned Skyrim into 50 different games at this point. Some people turned it into a hardcore survival RPG, and some probably installed hundreds of mods just to roleplay as a baker in Whiterun.